It had been a lazy morning so far. Katie discovered that ladybugs move a lot faster when they fly. Orbie learned that an acorn takes a long time to get buried in the ground. And they both figured out that toads love to hide in the flower garden. It was laundry day, one of Katie and Orbie's favorites because they could play a game of sheet shadows. As the sheets hung on the line and flapped in the breeze, you had to jump on the shadows and out in the sunlight. It was going to be great, except that when Mom picked up the box of laundry detergent, the box was almost empty. It was clear Mom and Katie and Orbie would have to walk up to Mr. Singh's store and buy more detergent. Katie and Orbie loved to go see what interesting things Mr. Singh had in his store. They decided to skip all the way there, which wasn't easy, and they were laughing and out of breath when they walked through the door. Mr. Singh was glad to see them and said good morning. While Mom went to find the detergent, Katie looked at the bubble-blowing kits and the skipping ropes that were on the shelves. Orbie walked around the store looking at everything from birthday cards to wax paper. Katie was remembering all the huge, wobbly, wet bubbles she and Orbie made at the cottage. And Orbie was wondering how grown-ups knew what all the boxes and packages were for. Mom found the detergent and went up to Mr. Singh at the cash register. Orbie stood beside Mom at the counter. He loved the jingle of the cash register. As he was listening for it, he discovered to his delight that he was standing nose to wrapper with a whole row of yummy chocolate bars. There were lots of them. Chocolate bars with nuts, chocolate stuffed with caramel, solid chocolate bars. Orbie licked his lips, and as he looked, he forgot about the jingle of the cash register and started to think about how really good a chocolate bar would be, especially one with caramel in it. He was so caught up in his thought that he just reached out and took one as the cash register jingled. When Mom got her change back and said goodbye, Orbie was still staring at the delicious chocolate bar. Mom said, "Let's go." He looked up and then scooted after Mom and Katie out the door. At home in the backyard, Mom hung up wet sheets and Katie practiced staying on the sheet shadows. Orbie fingered his wonderful chocolate bar. Usually, Orbie shared everything with Katie, but this looked so good that he forgot about sharing and thought about eating. In a second, the wrapper was off, but Orbie's smile disappeared when he saw a runny mess of chocolate and golden goo ooze out of the wrapper and all over his hand. The day was so warm, the chocolate bar had completely melted. Orbie gave a sad toot. This wasn't a yummy taste treat. This was a mess, and he wasn't very happy about it. Mom was just pinning the last sheet up when Orbie, with chocolate-covered hands, appeared at her side. He told her his chocolate bar had melted and he'd gotten it all over him. Mom said if he'd stand still for 2 seconds till she got this last sheet hung up, she'd get a washcloth and clean him up. Katie stopped shadow hopping and asked Orbie where he'd got the chocolate bar. When Mom heard Orbie burble at the store, Mom stopped what she was doing and turned to Orbie. She asked if he got the chocolate bar at Mr. Singh's store today, and Orbie nodded. Mom didn't say anything, but the look on her face told Orbie that something was wrong. As Mom cleaned Orbie's hand off and put the chocolatey mess in the plastic bag, she pointed out that she didn't buy a chocolate bar. Orbie looked at her, and Katie looked at him, and Mom explained that whether he meant to or not, he took something from the store without paying for it. And that was stealing. Orbie's eyes snapped wide open, and he actually gasped. Stealing? He had stolen something? He didn't mean to. Orbie felt absolutely awful. It was just that the chocolate bar looked so good. He'd picked it up, and when they left, he still had it with him. Mom knew that Orbie never intended to steal it, but it was Mr. Singh's, and they would have to take it back and explain. Orbie quickly tooted that they should go right away. He didn't want Mr. Singh to think he had done something bad on purpose. Mom asked Orbie to get his piggy bank, because he would need to pay for the chocolate bar. Orbie got his piggy bank and grabbed the gooey mess and headed for the door. When they arrived back at the store, Mr. Singh smiled and said hello again, but he could tell from their faces that something was wrong. Orbie walked slowly to the counter and put the melted chocolate bar on the counter. He burbled that he was sorry. He didn't mean to steal. Mr. Singh looked at the melted goo. Orbie told him it had looked so good he just picked it up. He tried not to cry. He felt so bad. And he burbled that he wouldn't ever do it again. Mr. Singh looked at the melted mess and then at Orbie, and he told Orbie that it was important not to take things that weren't yours. In a store, everything belongs to the owner until you've paid the money for it and made it your own. Orbie sniffed and looked at Katie. Mr. Singh told Orbie that he could tell that he had learned a difficult lesson today. He looked at Orbie's piggy bank and told Orbie the price. Mom helped Orbie count out his pennies, and when he had enough, he gave them to Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh told him that the chocolate bar was now his. Orbie didn't want it anymore. It had made him feel so bad. He asked Mr. Singh to throw it out. Mr. Singh opened up the cash register and it jingled. Orbie smiled and thanked Mr. Singh. On the way home, Katie took his hand and said they hadn't had a game of sheet shadows yet. Mom smiled at him, and in a flash, they ran down the sidewalk to their house. Orbie felt much better. So the next time you're in a store, remember, everything there belongs to the owner until it's paid for. I just know that you will.
Did you know? Ladybugs are very clever little insects. They're helpful in the garden, keeping other insects away so that flowers can grow. Some people think that they're good luck charms. If one lands on you, it's a special treat. I don't know if being covered in them is extra lucky, though.